We must say you're not the first church where we've made these presentations, but I believe you're the seventh, and that's the number of perfection. So that's where you fall. This morning we'll be sharing a message, and it's kind of an odd message. It could also be entitled, as you can see, How to Handle the R Word. And we're going to share some things to start out that you have actually walked with us through over the last few years. So for many of you, it may not be new information, but it kind of explains where we are now and why, and what our situation is, and then some thoughts that I hope will be an encouragement to you. If you're young, someday you will be at this point. If you're not young, you've maybe passed this point, and I hope it'll be an encouragement to you. I know it was to me to prepare this and to share it. I do have a short version of this because sometimes I add it on to the tail end of what we're going to be doing for the Sunday school hour, but for today you get pretty much the full version. And I think the clock is fairly close, actually. Maybe mine's a little fast too, I don't know. I get occasionally, fairly often, a jokes page, Good, Clean, Funny Jokes it's called. And they had some sayings for old age. And I thought some of them were kind of interesting. And I thought I'd open by sharing that with you to start with today. But old people shouldn't eat health foods. We need all the preservatives we can get. We must recognize, and this is from C.S. Lewis, this one, so I'm pretty safe with this. We must recognize that as we grow older, we become like old cars. More and more repairs and replacements are necessary. My midlife crisis in 2 sentences. Where am I going to park, and where did I park? And this one's a little unique. I tried to find it somewhere, but at our age we get more exercise because we need to go back upstairs to remember what we came downstairs for. And that's from Paul and Sandy Jewell, and I couldn't find it anywhere else, so I'll take credit for that. I should catch you up quickly on Ken Davis. I received a call yesterday that was very serious. His diagnosis was very, very severe, actually, initially, and felt I could go in and see him yesterday afternoon. Spent about 3 or 4 hours with him. Once he got back from the MRI, at least. We had good conversation, good talk together. And the doctor came in very excitedly and said, I have good news. You have Lyme disease. That may not sound like good news to a lot of us, but it was good news based on what the initial diagnosis was. So he also has some infection related to it that has been affecting him, I guess, for several weeks now, including meningitis. But the doctor kept emphasizing excitedly that we can treat that, we can treat that. And so it was not the best news, but it was good news in comparison. And so I'm glad I had that opportunity to share that time with him. And it will be a long road. He has, maybe shouldn't give too many details, but he has the second worst type of Lyme disease. But the doctor, again, as I emphasized, just kept repeating, we can treat that, we can treat that. So that was neat. What was interesting was I knew the doctor, someone who went to a former church of ours for a while, and knew he and his wife, and we had masks on, so I didn't recognize him at first until I saw his name, and then I thought, well, I hope I get some conversation in here, and I was able to get some conversation with him and catch up a little bit. His wife is actually the director of undergraduate studies at Syracuse University, he told me. So I'm going to have to check up on that and see just what that situation exactly is. But it was an encouraging afternoon. I think it was for Ken, too. We had a great conversation, seemed in good spirits, although he's not looking forward to the days ahead. we're excited that he's as well off as he is. So just continue to pray for him and these others that were mentioned this morning as well. I was mentioning to Pastor Brown that I find myself almost every week quoting his dad about something relating to the Greek language or some principle. It just seems to come up a lot. I guess we had a lot of learning and respect there, and we're glad for that. So, the Bible and aging, how to handle the R word. And like I said, you've walked with us through a lot of this, but we decided to retire from baptism admissions rather than resign for a number of reasons you can see here. I'm not going to be able to dwell a lot on all of these, but I will try to skim through this quickly. You can see some of the factors there that are involved. We continue to have a relationship with baptism admissions. They continue to funnel our funds and oversee our finances, so it gives us that freedom. And also, uniquely at Syracuse University, for us to be on campus as a campus group, we have to be approved by a larger organization. In other words, I couldn't just go there under my church or my name or something else. And baptism admissions gives us that recognition on the campus as well. This is kind of unusual, I think, for a requirement, but it does do that for us. Why retirement? Baptism admissions was asked for years, what's your policy about your missionaries' retirement? And so they felt they needed to come up with a policy that they could define. The missionaries who initially faced that weren't real happy with it, but we knew we didn't face it for a few years, and we felt it was a very fair policy. Retirement was required at the end of the year the missionary turned 70, but you could request an additional term of service, which would be 5 more years of ministry. And this was some of the processes that you had to go through to do that. And we did explain that to you at the time, and you walked this through us, especially the approval by the commissioning church, and to have a compelling reason to stay. Actually, we discovered that what they were looking for was a compelling reason for us to leave. That's what it seemed to come down to. So we consulted with the church here, with other supporting churches, with our children, there was medical doctors, and we said we're consulting with our children and our students to see what they think about us continuing, and everyone said, keep going. In fact, some of the former students said, you can't leave. We want to send our children to Syracuse University so you can teach them. Well, that doesn't happen a lot, but we're glad it did in the Council of Family and Friends, and people said, will your son tell you if you need to retire? And I said, yes, he will. And so probably we feel more like it now at 75, because now the requirement is that it also had to be approved, of course, by baptism admissions and the General Council. But if all this was satisfactory, you received permission to continue till the end of the year you turned 75. And that for us was last year, so that date was December 31st, last year, 2022. So it's been almost a year now, and you're probably wondering what we are doing, but we'll try to fill you in on that as we go along. I actually was following the notes up above, so I got caught up here. And I think I will use those instead of these notes. I can read it fine, and hopefully it will be useful. I copied the scriptures from the New King James Version. I hope that's satisfactory. And if you use the Old King James, it'll still follow the same general wording. So that will help you follow along if you want to turn to any of these references in the Bible. But there's a lot of them, so bear with me as we do this. The first thing is we come to an age where we're beginning to be a little more tired and wondering how we're going to function is to know our limitations. There was something that came to my mind in relationship to this from David's experience in 2 Samuel 11:1, and you know this part of the story well. The time of the year when the kings went out to battle, David stayed at home, and that was the time when he saw Bathsheba and committed adultery with her, had her husband killed in battle. Very sad story, but the point was he was, in a way, sensing his limitations and staying home from battle, or that may have just been his choice. Later on in 2 Samuel 21, when after all of this was done, he'd repented and come back to the Lord and probably faced a lot of the criticism that we saw in Psalm 21 or 71 today from his enemies. In fact, people felt he deserved to die because of what he had done, and humanly speaking and under the law, that would have been a possibility. But he decided to go out to battle now. You know, he wasn't going to make that same mistake again. And he went out to fight against the Philistines with a battle, and he almost lost his life, and it describes that in the finer print here. I have bolded some of this for what I wanted to emphasize. But they rescued him and told him at the end there, you should not go out, you should go out no more with us to battle, lest you quench the lamp of Israel. So it's time for you to quit going to battle. We don't want you to lose your life out there. And you almost did today. So knowing his limitations and making decisions for the future based on that. The second thing that I want to emphasize is the importance of being available to be useful. When you think of retirement, and if you look up ministry and retirement on the internet, it almost always will talk about ministers never retire. We should never retire. Well, you know, Christians never retire from being a Christian, obviously, but sometimes you have to adjust things. And the one passage I thought of, which ended up several passages that I was initially not aware of, was that in the law it said that this pertains to the Levites from 25 years old and above. One may enter to perform the service of the work of the tabernacle of meeting. At the age of 50 years, they must cease performing this work and shall work no more. And then it goes on to say they may minister with their brethren in the tabernacle of meeting to attend to needs, but they themselves shall do no work. And we'll do some explaining of that with some of the other passages. In Numbers 8:24, in regard to the Levites, said from 25 years old or more, a man enters the service, the work of the tent of meeting. But for 50 years old, he is to retire from his service and work no longer and serve, but he may assist his brethren. So there it's 25. I'm not sure of all the reasons for some of the differences between 20 and 50 and 25 and 50, but we'll talk about some of the differences later, and still able to fulfill. And I translated that from the another version because it was a little clearer. Be available to be useful. And from Numbers chapter 4, it explains a little bit of the reason. From 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old, you shall number them, all who enter to perform the service, do the work in the tabernacle of meeting. This is the service of the families, those service for those in serving and carrying. And then it talks about carrying the tabernacle. And it seems fairly apparent, and we'll see this in another passage that David taught, that one of the reasons for the age limit was because they had to carry the tabernacle. And it was better to be probably 30 to 50 in the strength of your life than even before that and after that. So it goes on to explain what they had to carry here, and we won't go through all of that. I think I missed a reference here. In 1 Chronicles, that has changed somewhat, and it says that as they were teaching about this, David said from that age and above, because God has given rest to his people, that they may dwell in Jerusalem forever, they no longer need to carry the tabernacle or any of the articles for its service. And David established the ministry of the Levites from 20 years old and above. And then when the tabernacle, or when the temple was rebuilt, when Ezra came back, they continued with that 20 years old and above to oversee the work of the house of the Lord. So some changes there, but it was the idea that those who were 50 years and older could still remain available to be useful in the ministry of the tabernacle. Next thing is to prepare others to carry on your work. We know some of the story of Eli and his sons, and we won't read some of that. Some of it's pretty bad morally. But Eli tried to warn them, at least weekly, why do you do these things? For I hear of your evil, your dealings from all the people is not good. That good report that I hear. You make the Lord's people transgress. If a man sins against another, God will judge him, but if a man sins against the Lord, who will intercede for him? Nevertheless, they did not heed the voice of their father, because the Lord desired to kill them. And they did end up dying. Eli ended up dying later when he fell back. There are a lot of pluses in Eli's life too, not just negatives. We won't look at all those today, but his sons did not follow the Lord. And so his family eventually was wiped off the face of the earth and no longer were alive to serve the Lord at a later time. Samuel perhaps fared a little better. We don't know all the reasons why Samuel's sons did not follow the Lord, but Samuel was a very busy man, a judge of Israel, judging from the north to the south every year, and perhaps he neglected some of the training that he should have done with his sons. But when he put his sons in charge, they did not follow as Samuel had, and the people said they did not walk in his ways, but they turned aside against dishonest gain, took bribes, perverted justice. And the elders of Israel gathered together and told Samuel about this and requested a king like all the other nations. Of course, that broke Samuel's heart, not just that his sons were not following the Lord faithfully, but that they would request a king. And Samuel knew what that would bring, and God allowed that. And the king, position of king was started with Saul, and you know much of the history about that. The next thing is that we need to care what happens after we are gone. There's an interesting king in the Bible, Hezekiah, and you may think we're taking time to look at everything about him today, but there's a lot in there about his character, the good things about him, his weaknesses. And I start with this because Hezekiah had rebelled against Sennacherib in Assyria. And when they came after him and the nation of Israel, he had said, I have done wrong. I'll turn away from whatever you impose on me, I will do. Just tell me what to do. And the king assessed him, and Hezekiah was willing to do whatever the king said. Hezekiah had a way of thinking about his own well-being, and we'll see how this ends up in the end here. But Hezekiah even took the gold from the doors of the temple and the pillars and those things and gave it to the king of Assyria to get out of this situation where the king of Assyria was dissatisfied coming after them. So that lays a little groundwork for that. You may know the issue of Hezekiah's prediction of his death. In those days, Hezekiah was sick and near death, and Isaiah the prophet, son of Amos, went to him and said to him, Thus says the Lord, get your house in order, you shall die and not live. And again, Hezekiah, wanting the best for himself, which, of course, in a way we all do. He turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord. That was good that he prayed and wept bitterly and says, Remember, Lord, and pray how I have walked before you in truth and with a loyal heart and have done what was good in your sight. And he wept bitterly. And before Isaiah could get out of the court, the Lord came to him and said, Return and tell Hezekiah, I've heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. Surely I will heal you. On the third day you shall go up to the house of the Lord, and I will add to your days 15 years. I will deliver you and this city from the hand of the king of Assyria. I will defend this city for my own sake and for the sake of my servant David. So the Lord added 15 years to his life. I don't know if I would want my death to come suddenly or know the time of it. I'm not sure of that, but 15 years is beginning to look pretty good right now in our lives. But during that time of that 15 years, Manasseh was born, and he took the throne at 12 years old. And he was one of the most evil kings, if not the most evil king that Judah ever had. And that occurred in the extra time that God had given to Hezekiah. That child was born who became a very wicked king. And it said he did according to all the abomination of the nations whom the Lord had cast out before the children of Israel. And later on in his life, I don't have verses on this part, but he did repent, and yet God still caused the kingdom to go into exile because his previous part of his reign had been so evil. But Hezekiah, it says in 2 Kings 20 that he was, and you may have different wording in your version, but that he was attentive, or he heard. And in Isaiah 39:2, the parallel passage of that, the word used there is a word for being glad or cheered up. There was more to it than he just listened to them. He listened to them and wanted to kind of brag and show his wealth and his power. And he was cheered up that they came to say, we're so glad your life was spared and everything. And that caused him probably to lose some of his humility. And he showed them everything that was in the house and in his temple and his treasuries. There was nothing in his house or in all his dominion that Hezekiah did not show them. And then Isaiah came and said, what did these men say? And where did they come from? Oh, they came from a far country, so far away. And it's interesting that today we're seeing Israel, really, they've said they're at war. And, of course, that has been historic for them. And this was one of the first times that this had happened in their history. But Hezekiah said they've seen everything, and there's nothing that I didn't show them. And then the prophet warns them, behold, the days are coming when all that is in your house and what your fathers have accumulated until this day will be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, says the Lord. He'll take away some of your sons and who will descend from you and will beget, and they will be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. So Hezekiah said to Isaiah, the word of the Lord which you have spoken is good, for he said, will there not be peace and truth, at least in my days? Interesting response based on what we're seeing more of his character and his weakness. And he did have many good points, for sure. He was one of the good kings, but I think he had this issue of being satisfied and happy as long as things were good in his time. And that is something we need to avoid in our thinking. And it's easy to think, it's not my responsibility anymore. I don't have to do that anymore. That's up to somebody else now. But if you've ministered and you've cared about people and cared about a ministry, your care goes on. And even if you leave, pastors, I'm sure, from this church and who've interim here still pray for you and care for you, even though that may not be the core of what they're doing right now. God has brought another man to minister to your needs. But continue to, when you leave, continue to care. And I think most of us don't need to be told that, but it's tempting to lose that sometimes. So, what are our plans? I have gotten through this a little more quickly than I thought I was going to, so we should be okay today. I almost changed this to Tanners have taken our place in Syracuse leadership. because they have. We are now, in a sense, in the background. They are leading. We don't qualify to lead that station anymore because of our retirement. But we still have the freedom to do much of what we have, and we will continue to be there for them, to encourage them. And particularly this week, we had some conversations with them that reflect what we have shared over the years through our letters and our ministry, that we're already concerned about next year. We're graduating people. Some of our key people will be gone. And we're already concerned. And Tanners have really adopted the campus and have really understood the seriousness and the pitfalls that there can be. And we hope we can continue to be an encouragement to them, maybe help them come up with some ideas about reaching out more. And that particularly has been a concern this week. I woke up this morning thinking about it quite a bit and praying for them. But we will continue to work with them, continue to live in our house near campus. As you know, Sandy had hip replacement a few months ago, but the doctor just cleared her to do anything she wants to do. So that was encouraging. You'll see us in 6 months. She still has some pain from other things, but some of you maybe been at our house, but we have steps everywhere. Not a lot anywhere, but steps everywhere. But we still plan to stay there. We'll get that extra exercise going back upstairs to remember what we came downstairs for. But we're still near the campus. We can get over to campus very easily and quickly and be available. And our home is still available for ministry, so we hope to be able to maintain that for a while longer and to continue to carry out some of the same ministries we have in the past 48 years. And one ministry we have now that we're trusting to be able to continue is to have Bible studies on Zoom and over the phone with alumni. And we now have 5 people, 5 Bible studies a week with sometimes they're combined. Sandy still does Zoom with 2 Chinese ladies from our previous ministry. At times, one of them has been in New Jersey and the other one's been in China. And so they're on the same Zoom screen, though. And they don't seem terribly concerned about Bible studies over Zoom. We're not all sure why, but we try to be a little cautious. They're both in America now, but have that study, a former student that I have a phone or Zoom study with, another one with a phone study, and then we teach a college-age class at church that we're involved with, and I have another phone study as well. Pretty much every week, those are ones we do. So there's still involved preparation, and that's a great opportunity. The one guy I've met with over 30 years, Wednesday night, 9 o'clock, for 30 years. And if he says, I'll call you another night, he usually doesn't. Wednesday is about what he's confined to. But we're thankful for those continued opportunities and contacts that we have. And we have some alumni here in the room, don't we, from the past, and we're so thankful for that. And just to forewarn you, there's a picture coming up later. Okay. But we're so thankful to still be able to be there and to continue to minister. And the psalm we read this morning, Psalm 71, I thought initially about skipping the middle part because that's gloom and doom and all the things that they face from their enemies. But the beginning of the and the end really reflect, and I appreciate Doris putting the one verse in. I don't know if you got that after she talked to me on the phone or not, but I wanted to read these 3 verses to just remind us that in our aging and in our retirement, there's still hope for the future. And many of you who are older can be encouragement to younger people, and many of you have been encouragements to us in this church. And we're so thankful for that, and you still are. We're so thankful that that remains. But, oh God, you have taught me from my youth, and from this day I declare your wondrous works. Now, when I am old and gray-headed, oh God, do not forsake me until I declare your strength to this generation, your power to everyone who is to come. Also, your righteousness, O God, is very high. You who have done great things, O God, who is like you? And we're talking today about what the Lord has enabled us to do in people's lives. We're going to show you over 200 slides of people and situations. And don't worry, I get through it pretty quick, of how the Lord has blessed us. But all the credit goes to the Lord. It's His righteousness and His doing. And anything we've been able to accomplish has been by His strength and His mercy and grace, and continues to be. And we are thankful that while we have a lesser ministry, perhaps to this generation, God has given us some wonderful students at Syracuse University this year, last year, and the year before. And one of them is a granddaughter. And you will have to endure a few pictures of her in the slides, too. She's presently our student president. She belongs to 2 or 3 other clubs and does so many things. But we appreciate her, and she'll be gone next year. And she has been a huge help to us on campus. So thankful for her, that God would raise up, praying that God would raise up somebody to take her place and do all that work, as well as the need for a total of 4 officers who are full-time students in good standing, and 8 students altogether, including those 4 officers, who are students at the university that we need to fulfill the requirements to be on campus. Of course, we want more than 8. You know, we have more than that right now, but a number of the key students are graduating next year. So already begin praying that the Lord would raise up students for next year. And even into next year, we have not heard back yet if we have approval to be a registered student organization. It's been 3 weeks now, and I've never seen it take that long. Hopefully isn't us particularly, but hopefully they're just loaded with, I think it's over 300 student groups now that they have to keep track of. So everything's not against us, you know, although there's some dangers there that we face. You can ask us about later, but God has been gracious every year to raise up what we have needed to continue to the next year. One summer we came back from our summer meetings and vacation, and we didn't even have a student to sign papers. And came to church that Sunday, came back to church, and for some reason I don't think I was quite as worried about it as I would be now. And the church member said, you know, there was a SU student here last week, and they're looking for a ministry to help out, and for a ministry on campus. I said, oh, well, that's a quick answer to prayer. And went and visited them, asked him to be our officer. He was willing to be, and became very close friends for the next years, and still continue to stay in touch with us. And so God, literally or figuratively, at the 11th hour, raised up what we needed that year. And we've seen that happen each year. And we've been so thankful that God has allowed that continuity, because the registered student organizations group would probably look even more carefully at us if we were initially starting. So the continuity helps there. We hope it continues to help that way. But thank you for your prayers, and we pray for you as well. And we appreciate all the encouragement that you've been to us over the years. Well, God bless.